Good evening, team. Welcome back to Glenn's workshop. So we're going to pull the wheel off the truck. We have already jacked it all up, so it is all off the ground. I have already pre-loosened the nuts, so then we don't have to worry about too much of that. So all we're going to do is get into it and see what's going on with the brakes. I have a feeling that the brake pads are probably getting low, and that's why they're starting to squeal away, but we'll open it up and have a look and see what's going on. Okay, maybe I didn't undo all of them. As I was saying, if you in the last video with the changing of the tyre, if you leave that last nut just on last, then it'll actually support everything, so then you don't have to worry about the tyre coming off, and it makes it easier to get that last one off as well. Every time I'm working on anything, if you don't have axle stands or if you don't have anything like that, what you can do, you can, once you've taken the wheel off, you can chuck the spare tyre or the wheel underneath the truck itself. So then if anything does happen, it will literally just drop the truck straight onto that wheel, which will therefore act like an axle stand, so it won't actually come down on you or do any damage to anything. So now that we're underneath here, let's just get the brakes off the truck. We'll lift them up and we'll see what's going on, eh? You can just take one off and then loosen the other one off, and then everything should just lift straight up. So these ones here are your brake pads. This top one here is the piston, so when you put the foot on the brake, the oil will shoot through the lines, and then that'll push the piston out to therefore squeeze the brake pads together to slow you down. So what we might do, we might just take it completely off. And then you just rest it right at the top. Now we've got both hands free to then take the brake pads out. We'll just slide them out. So they just slide out towards you. So they're getting low, but they're not completely dead yet. So you've still got a fair bit on either side. but I can see that the gap in the middle here is chocked up with brake dust. So what I might do, we'll get all that cleaned out, and we'll see what the other side's like as well. Just see if we can find something just to scrape that out of there. Normally when the brake pads are nearly completely buggered, they'll drop down to below this ridge line here, and that's how you can tell that they're pretty much ready to be replaced. So what I'm guessing is with the squealing, this brake dust that's caught up inside of there is just rubbing against the disc. So when you are in there and having a look, you can rub your finger along the brake disc and you'll feel little lines. So if anything's caught in between the disc and the pad, you'll feel the lines, which means that the stuff that's being caught in there is actually scratching the disc, which can be pretty bad. So I'll just find something to clean out the disc. Now while we're up here, we will get back onto the weed eater. I have not been able to find the haven't been able to find a new one of these, so I'm not sure what we're going to do yet, but we will get back onto it. And as we were saying last time we visited, it is really crunchy. But anyway, what I do, we'll just get rid of this stuff here out of the middle of here. So we will be getting some brake pads shortly, because they are definitely starting to get low. Now at the back here, these are little shims that help manage the vibration of the brake pad. So if these pieces here are loose, or if they're falling off or damaged in any way, then you can feel vibration, and they can also squeal as well. So what we'll do, we'll put that one there back in again. Make sure she's in there nice and tight, no wiggling. So we'll remove the other one and we'll have a look at that one. But I am so look at that. So that one there is completely full of dust as well. So we'll give that a nice clean out and make sure that's all nice. So they normally do wear at the same time. So as you can tell, this brake pad is almost identical to the front one. Also, just make sure when you are pulling them out, make sure your fingers aren't greasy, and because you don't want to get any grease or any oil or anything on the face side of the brake pads. So now that that's all cleaned out, everything else looks okay. Oh, there is a little bit of stuff underneath that anti-squeal shade or vibration pad. We might actually give that a clean up, eh? I'll just go grab a little bit of cleaning stuff. won't actually completely drench any of it. All we literally will do is just put a little bit onto a rag and then just rub it against the anti-squirrel pad, or the anti-squirrel shim. So this stuff here evaporates pretty quickly, so that's the good thing about it. You don't really have to rub it too much, it gets everything off, and it also dries really, really quickly as well. So yeah, by the looks of it, I think the squealing, well, we haven't pulled apart the other side yet, so I will be doing that at a later stage. I thought we'd get this side looked at first, and then I'll move the truck around and we'll jump into the other side at a later stage. If it stops squealing, then everything will be alright. Then the next time we get in here is when the brake pads actually need to be completely replaced. And then of course we'll put that up and you guys can have a look and see how we do that. Yeah, I think we're still good. They are getting close and they are getting down, but as I say, we'll still get a little bit out of them yet. Right, we'll whack that one back in. And we'll just pull that first one back out again, and we will just have a look and give it a little bit of a degrease as well. We'll definitely get that stuff off the squirrel pad there. As I say, this stuff evaporates really, really quickly anyway, so you don't have to worry too much about it getting on much. And it is a good degreaser. Alright, so once you've sprayed a little bit on, then just give it a wipe over, get all the dirts off. And there was I'm not sure whether you guys can see it or not, but there is a few bumps on there as well. Excuse me. Yeah. Now that we've got some So yeah, as you can tell, both sides are wearing exactly the same as each other. So the point you got to look for is between this point here and this point here. That's why normally when that line there, when you're getting low, you won't be able to see it, and that's when you should definitely put a new pair of pads on. But we'll leave these ones on for a little while longer. Does feel pretty good. And so we can just check the piston out as well, make sure there's nothing wrong with anything inside of there. There's a little bit of rubbing just up inside of there. Might just give that a little bit of a huck up. Make sure it all goes back nice and clean. So as you can tell, brakes aren't very difficult at all. You've just got to make sure that you have no grease on the pads or on the disc when you reassemble, and just make sure that everything is nice and snugged up and tight. So when you've just done what we have tonight, you don't have to do anything to the piston. But when you do put new brake pads in, this piston's got to be pushed back to then make way for the new brake pads to fit in, or else the brake pads take up a lot more space than what's on in them at the moment, so the pistons come out a fair way. So when you do it, there is a nut here, the banjo nut, that you can undo, or you can also undo the bleed screw here. So the bleed screw is when you've actually pushed the piston back, then you may have air in the lines, and then that's when you have to pump the brakes to get pressure in the lines and then release it through the bleed screw to then make sure the brakes are going to work properly. But when we actually put some new pads on this one, then we'll look at showing you guys how to do all of that. But because it is just a straight swap over, everything normally goes back together fairly well without needing to do any bleeding or anything. Of course, anytime you're under the bonnet or taking the wheels off or anywhere that you can't normally see, always just make sure you have a good look over everything. Make sure you have a good look over all your suspension components, all your struts, all your wishbones, all your ball joints, everything that could wear out or anything that could look funny, because you're hardly ever underneath here. So when you do pull it all apart, just have a good look, and anything that looks not quite right, then that may be the next thing that you have to replace. Everything else seems to be okay. Now, my little thing is that anytime you're doing any nuts up, always put a bit of pressure on it. Make sure you do both. And then just to finalize it, just give it a little tap. Because you also don't want to thread the bolt either. So if you tap it too hard, then you may find that you'll thread the bolt, and then you'll be in a lot more trouble than what you were. So once you've got everything back on again, just make sure that everything's free moving again. Make sure nothing's locked up or anything ready to go. This is just a spacer for the wheels, so the original, these definitely aren't the original wheels, so they've definitely put some aftermarket wheels on it. So this is just a spacer that will bring it out from the disc and the braking components, so then it fits in there nice and neat. What we'll do, we'll just give the brake disc final wipe down before we put the wheel back on again. As I say, you don't want to leave anything greasy on the surfaces. Nice and clean. Now, always before you're about to do everything up, just make sure that you have tightened all of the bolts. Make sure they are nice and snug. Last thing you want to do is put everything back together, go for a drive, and something catastrophic happens. So always check your work. 120%. Right, I think we'll put the wheel back on. I don't think I'll show you the other side. It's literally exactly what we've done now. So we'll just take the wheel off, take the pads out, give them a look, give them a really nice clean up. But I'm pretty sure that the actual squealing may have been the dust in between in that little gap, or even the squeal metal pads that we cleaned off. So that may have been the culprit too, but I'm sure we'll find out once we put it all back together and give it a drive. And also, I think I've found why it was shuddering on braking. When you actually have a look at the wheel itself, there is a little bit more wear on this side of the tire. So I think by the looks of it, I think they will definitely have to have a new tires popped on, and of course once they put the new tires on, then give it a balance as well. So once they balance the new ones out, then the shuddering should stop as well. So right, we'll get the wheel back on again. Now remember, always try and keep one of the main studs at the top. Now the easiest way to do it when the tires are quite heavy, what you can do is you can put your legs down either side and then look for that stud on the inside where you're about to get it. Make sure the top hole is lining up with the stud, and then use your arms to then lift with your legs. And always remember, make sure that stud's at the top, and that's the first nut that you put on, because that there will support everything. Give it a wiggle and tighten it at the same time, and then that'll get everything ready to go for the rest of the nuts to go on. So what I do is I just hand twist them on to begin with. Now, what you want to do is, we've already done that one up quite tight, so now we've got a bit of play down the bottom. So now with the bottom stud, you push it in until it stops, and then you tighten that one there up. And now you shouldn't have any movement in it whatsoever. So then you can go along, tighten the rest of them up by hand. and then snug them up quite tight, because remember, we're going to do the final tighten on them once it's actually on the ground. So when it comes to doing the rotation and the tightening up of the studs, always try and go in a star shape. So start with this one or any one, and then go opposite, and then go round, 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 and round. And then if you're going opposite to each other, then you won't get the tire turning one way or another. It'll always be sitting flat. And so we just snug them up. Because remember, if you don't have the handbrake or anything on, then you can't tighten them up completely because the wheel's free to turn. So once you've got all of them snugged up, then we can go ahead and drop the car down. And then we'll go and do the final turn of the nut. And remember, always go opposite. So I started with this one, then go directly opposite. Then move around to the next one, directly opposite. Remember, always test your work and go around and spin every one, just in case you did miss one. Now this one here does have a wheel cover, so we'll quickly slot that wheel cover back on again, and that's what finishes it off. So we definitely won't put the second wheel up. I'll just go ahead and I'll just do that off camera. But I think we will be revisiting this one shortly, because we will be replacing those pads soon enough, I think. Because they are definitely starting to get low, but hey, there's a little bit of meat left on them yet, so we won't worry about it yet. Alrighty, well, I think that'll do it for tonight. I hope you guys have learned something and enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and we will catch up with you later. Alrighty, good night.